Hi, Claire Wasserman here, founder and author of Ladies Get Paid, a podcast, newsletter, and book that helps you build a better work life. My client today is in a situation that at first might seem enviable. She just received two job offers after being laid off from her company. However, she's really torn. Here are the offers. One is with a major corporation that will require travel, frequent travel to Seattle, and another one is with a mission driven organization that pays significantly less. So basically, she's deciding between her head and her heart. With a new home in California and family responsibilities to consider, she opens up to me about her struggle between financial stability and personal fulfillment. So come and eavesdrop in on this session as we explore both the nuances of how to make this decision, but also strategies for after the decision. In her case, in particular, preventing burnout, setting boundaries, and finding balance between professional growth and personal well being in today's complex job market. Let's dive in. I would love for you to just give me some context to the situation that you're in, and let's see if I can challenge myself to be as helpful as possible in the time that we have together today.
Awesome. Thanks, Claire. So I'll start off with a little bit of background. I have 7 years of experience in customer success and client relationships. I have about 2 years almost under my belt at my company that I got laid off from due to a RIF. And I actually just bought my first home in California, which was definitely a daunting task. And
Congratulations. That's huge.
Thank you. It was such a wonderful challenge and goal to be able to make a reality. I just was not anticipating a layoff right after. So it's put me in a financial situation where I need to find work ASAP. And I've been working tirelessly the past 3 months to make that happen. And I have two offers. One is a large corporate giant based in Seattle. It is a decent offer, and it is very close to what I was making at my previous company. However, they want me to be in Seattle 3 days a week. The other offer that I have is for a very small, it is not a nonprofit, but it operates like a nonprofit. And it is a company that has created a SaaS product to help pay for kids' lunch programs, whether it's in daycare or schools, and get reimbursement through food programs subsidized by the government. So really like beautiful, wonderful group of people helping to keep children fed in America. And that offer is incredibly low, especially in comparison to the other one. So my dilemma is I have a family and we are also trying for another. And so I need the financial income and stability to maintain this home that I just bought and continue like on track with what we have planned. And I can do that by taking the hybrid job and travel back and forth from California to see. Or I need to put a lot of that on hold and potentially sell my home that I worked so hard to get and take the lower paying job because that job is fully remote and like altruistically a better cause for me and would be more fulfilling. Like the work would be more fulfilling with me than working for a corporate giant, right? So I'm really in this dilemma where it's like, I would love to be able to follow my heart and just trust that everything would be okay and be paid 35 to 40% under market value for what I'm worth, as opposed to killing myself and really overstretching and overextending in a way that would essentially lead to burnout. So I'm in a tough position and I know what the right answer is, but I just don't know if I'm in a position to make it. And the other option is I take neither and I just keep looking and really hope that something else falls into my lap and sooner rather than later. So that's the situation.
Really interesting thing that you said. I know the right answer. Tell me, what is that answer?
So I actually am a survivor of ovarian cancer. And so for me and my health and my well-being, I know that being in tech and working a high stress corporate job isn't necessarily the answer for me. And I actually didn't pursue this role. They pursued me, which is amazing. But I know that long term this isn't going to work. So for me and my life and what I need in order to be successful, I think the other job would be more suitable for my overall happiness and health and well-being.
Now, are we sure though? Because when I hear nonprofit, that often means actually even more stress, and not just like the stress of potentially doing the work of multiple people because they're trying to save money, but also the emotional stress of you deeply care about it. So I'm going to play some pros and cons and we're going to map out all of this. I'm going to now argue in defense of the corporate. You care less about it. You're less emotionally invested. So to me, I feel like you could potentially set up a way of working where you just don't care. You're doing your work, you have systems, and you're able to shut your laptop at night and you're not thinking about it. Whereas the other one, it's related more to your heart. I'm looking at these two options, by the way, as like your heart versus your head a little bit. My concern with the heart decision, and I can't believe I'm arguing in favor of the head, but let me just say the concern with the heart decision is you'll never be able to turn it off. You're just so invested in it and you care so much. And you may have some fear of asking for more for you because you see it as, well, therefore it's less for them, or you get really emotionally entangled in that. Whereas sometimes there's a lot of merit in working for non-cause based, and on the weekends or in other parts of your life, you're able to do more heart-based work. And it's coming from a place of just like pure desire as opposed to obligation. So I'm interested to hear from you. Have you had experience before in working with cause-based jobs? Were you able to protect yourself emotionally from that work and prevent the kind of emotional burnout that can often come with doing cause-based work?
That's such a wise question to ask, Claire, and super insightful. And as I'm thinking of my answer, the two previous companies that I've worked for have intentionally been more cause-based, coming from a venture capital corporate, like huge corporate commercial banking background. I chose my companies with a lot of self-awareness and intention to have cause. And now that you frame and ask that question that way, I have been truly and deeply invested in those roles because of the mission and the mission-based and value-driven approach. So yeah, it would be really challenging for me to turn off, I think. Absolutely.
Yeah. Listen, there's basically my point in all of this is there is a sacrifice that is made in every single decision. Just even speaking from a personal place, because I've worked at nonprofits, Ladies Get Paid is mission driven. It's wonderful. And it's also terrible. It's exhausting. Or if someone's like, oh, I really want to be an entrepreneur. I'm like, are you sure? Let me tell you all the reasons why being an entrepreneur is really hard. Think about what kind of hard is going to still be okay with you and also give you things that you maybe didn't have before or things that bring you value. So I actually want to think about not this next job, but what this next job will position you to do in the future. So from a kind of growth perspective, and let's put financial growth over on the side for skills growth, network growth, exposure growth. What will you get from each of these things? And are they totally different in terms of the growth? Is one more growth related than the other? Because that to me is the best next decision, is what is going to position you for just more momentum.
Yeah, that's a very fair question to ask. I think the higher profile job would definitely open a lot more doors for me in terms of future opportunity.
What about the day-to-day work for both of them? What does one, or how similar are they? And does one feel just more interesting to you?
One is really getting in there and being strategic and with more of a client-facing approach. And the other one is client-facing as well, but really building the ship as the ship is already en route. So it's more of the build and the process and the operational strategy, which is fun for me. One's more startup, get your hands dirty, everything's a mess.
Yeah.
And the other one is very process. It's cookie cutter, plug and play.
In terms of potentially looking for other work, so saying no to both of these, which I know is really scary and we're not at that place yet, but let's just talk through it for a second. What are you seeing right now in the market in terms of availability of jobs that are interesting to you? Because the reason I'm now like, oh gosh, maybe we need to find you something else is the fact that the corporate company pursued. By the way, I want us to talk through how we can improve that offer if possible, or maybe you can tell me if you already have tried negotiating. But yeah, what do you feel like is the market right now in relation to what you're looking for? How secure do you feel?
I feel like the market is on its way to improving. I don't feel like it's quite there yet. Based on what I know from other individuals who have been laid off due to rifts, they are very much struggling. And I feel very fortunate to even have two offers to be considering.
Can you actually know what that word is? I actually don't know what it is.
Sorry, which one?
Yeah, did you say riff?
Oh,
or?
RIF. So reducement in workforce.
Oh, okay. So acronym.
Yes.
Well, that's embarrassing. I didn't know, but you know what? Probably a lot of people listening also weren't quite sure. Okay. Were these layoffs because they overhired during the pandemic and then needed to
Absolutely.
downsize? Yeah, it's such bullshit. It's guys, get your shit together. Although I have to say, for anybody listening who's, oh yeah, the economy's so bad. Actually, a lot of these companies that overhired during the pandemic that now are doing these mass layoffs still have more workforce than they did pre-pandemic. I don't know if that makes people feel worse or better, but it's a weird market correction that's happening. Okay, so you feel like it's getting better, but you're still not sure.
I don't foresee it getting better I think that it's going to take another 3 to 6 months, which scares me because I personally don't have 3 to 6 months. I'm not in a situation where I can afford to wait longer.
Mhm.
But I do think it will correct. I think there's also a big change in the industry in how people are titling things. There's a lot of shift in what is what and what umbrella or what org it falls under. And there's a lot of gray area as well for titles to be reflecting like lower paying jobs. So I feel like in terms of compensation, companies really have power to negotiate or not negotiate with you.
Mhm.
And take the offer or leave it. Like we have 100 other applicants that are just as qualified as you, which
Right.
was the situation for my corporate offer. They're like, this offer is as is. There is no room for negotiation, which was wild. I've never been in a situation where a company didn't negotiate an offer with me. It was
Yeah,
just shocking.
I wish companies had no negotiation because therefore we're guaranteeing that the people who get paid the most are not, it's not because they're the best negotiators. Like we shouldn't be rewarding people based on their negotiation, but unfortunately it's capitalism. That's the way it is. And it gave me a
Right.
business. I want to put myself out of business here, but yeah, why is negotiation part of getting a job? It should just be, this is what's listed and here's why, and here's the path for promotion. But so there is something to be said about them being a quote non-negotiable. The reason I'm saying quote non-negotiable is because you can always negotiate other benefits in full comp. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk to you about. If you
Sure.
were to go down this path of saying yes to the big corporate company, what can we ask for that's going to sweeten the deal for you? And also, even a negotiation with yourself, all of your concerns of burnout, etc., totally valid. Let's create a plan for ourselves where we are safeguarding against that. In the first 90 days, if you do accept this offer, how do we make sure that you are laying the groundwork to be seen as a person who does their work really well, but also is not somebody who's going to respond to your email immediately or work on the weekend or whatever it is that you've seen in the past that, has indicated to you, you tend to, do this stuff and it then leads to burnout. Because here's the thing, it's not to me just a question of, do you say yes or no to these offers? It's yes and.
Right.
Like, how are we going into this experience, both in terms of the conversation you have with them, but also, like I said, the conversation you have with yourself and the role that you see work playing in your life, in the holistic view of your life, of your family and your friends and it's like work is just one piece of it. And so if it's fulfilling the financial piece, the exposure piece, maybe that's it. But we got to make sure that we're containing it, right? If it's only filling those two pieces and you have all these other parts of your life that you also want to be investing in, we just have to make sure that we're not allowing work to bleed into all those other aspects. So that if you do say yes to a corporate, to the head option here, we need to make sure you're still exercising the heart part of your life. Because I don't want you at home every night being like, wow, I just sold out and I feel terrible. Maybe it's, yeah, I quote sold out in this aspect, but I'm getting these other things for it. And once a month, I mentor somebody. or at this corporate company, I'm involved in their employee resource group, and that's how I'm fulfilling the heart part, right? It's like
Mhm.
all these things just need to play a role in your life. It's like a puzzle, right? It's like just figuring out where this puzzle piece fits. And that's what we're doing right now, I think, in the arrangement of the pieces. Hopefully that made sense. I think my caffeine did hitting me as much as I wanted it to. From what I've said so far, anything sticking out to you as resonant?
Yeah, I think it's really my responsibility to have control over A, my work ethic, and B, how much energy I really am putting in and when I'm putting it in, and being really strategic on that. And I think that's something where I actually have a lot of room for improvement. And it takes a lot of mental strength to have those boundaries and say no and to not respond to that email, especially when you're in a work culture that doesn't support that style of work,
Mhm.
right? So I think for me, if I go that route, the opportunity for me to improve that, to take better care of myself and to be happier with this arrangement is going to be to really focus on preventing that from happening and having really strong, hard boundaries and lines in the sand to follow no matter what, and have that framework built going in with that
Mhm.
mindset.
Have you talked to, let's talk through, I'm just going to focus on the corporate option for now and improving that deal. So I know they said the price is non-negotiable. Have you had a discussion with them about your full compensation package?
Yeah, so every single part of the compensation package was non-negotiable, which was shocking to me.
Mhm.
The base compensation, the bonus compensation, the sign-on compensation, and the equity was all non-negotiable. So that left me with benefits and
Mhm.
other things to ask for, which they said that additional PTO is standard per company policy and is non-negotiable, and other things of that sort. What I was able to negotiate was a 60-day start time to be remote,
Okay.
to transition to the hybrid model that they would like me to be on site for. So I have 60 days to work remote in order to set myself up for that.
Okay.
That was the only thing I was able to get.
Okay. Are they waiting on an answer for you like today? Like, what's your
I think
timeline here?
yeah, so I haven't signed the paperwork yet. I actually have an employment lawyer looking at it because there's some really sticky things with a non-compete, but I will be signing that by the end of this week.
So I'm just going to list out a whole bunch of full comp stuff. Okay. And I
Okay.
want you to tell me if any of this is in the package they gave you. And if not, which ones might bring you value.
Okay.
And some of the stuff you've already said, but I'm going to say it anyway. Flexible work hours, higher commission, signing bonus, stock options, increased equity, timetable for review, career development, LinkedIn premium, laptop, increased paid leave, vacation days, compensation for travel, disability life insurance, any kind of subscriptions, relocation expenses, scope of responsibilities, incentive bonus, severance, 401k benefits, medical benefits, childcare stipend, college tuition, student loan repayment, financial education, gym membership, food stipend, and start day. That was a lot of stuff.
Okay.
I don't know if anything stood out to you.
Yeah, the severance, I never thought about negotiating the severance up front.
Yeah, it's an awkward thing because you're like, I'm not saying that I'm going to leave but here's the good for everybody listening. The thing with severance and talking about it these days, it should be a given. We've seen what's going on in the tech industry. Oftentimes people who are the first in, or the last in or the first out, right? Because there's been a whole wave of folks who were hired during the pandemic and then they are course correcting and letting them go. So I think it might be worth bringing up just like what is their severance policy and just contextualizing it with only because I know with the instability in the market, especially in tech, I want to just cover my bases here. So it might be worth digging into that. You're talking to an employment lawyer, so you should probably get more language from them around that.
Mhm.
But if, let's say, they do let you go within, I don't know, X amount of, you're telling them, I've had to say no to another offer because of you. If you let me go within the first year, like, I have to protect myself. Like, I know I'm going to do a great job. You're not going to want to let me go for cause. But I've seen a downsizing and I want to just make sure I'm protecting myself. Again, for anybody listening who's thinking, oh, I don't want to bring this up because it makes it look like I want to leave or no, this is just factual. It is what the market is looking unstable in the tech industry. So I would talk to your employment lawyer about that. But I also want to make sure with your working from home, are they paying for your overhead, your internet, your cell phone? If you have issues with your laptop, like I mentioned, the LinkedIn premium, there's a lot of people out there who are they're paying out of pocket for their operational costs, but they're working for an employer who's now saving costs on maybe they don't even have an office anymore. I know this new company does, but I just want to make sure that given that you are working remotely such a huge chunk of time, are there things that they can pay for that can alleviate some of that financial stress?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that they include in the benefits. It's not as robust as a lot of the other things that you listed in terms of a gym membership or
Mhm.
LinkedIn Premium, but they do pay a portion of internet, a portion of cell phone.
Okay,
They do give you a
good.
laptop, and they are paying for relocation as well, a small marginal amount.
By the way, is this salary, how is it on par with the market research that you did?
The market has taken a hit in terms of compensation, so I feel like it's a little bit challenging for people to get what they were making previously, at least in my experience in the research that I've done. The base is under market value, but the way that this company base offsets that is by paying a really high sign-on bonus for year
Mhm,
1 and year 2, and
mhm,
then after year 2, it drops off to the base. So essentially,
mhm.
you lose like 30 to 40% of your compensation because you go down to the base amount. So that also is something that I negotiated really hard on, and there was no movement there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. It's non-negotiable. It is what it is. Before and I just want to go back to the heart option for a sec. First of all, do you feel any differently between these two options now that I've apparently gone hard for the man?
It's so funny, Claire. Over the past week, I've been flip flopping back and forth so much. So I'm really happy that you and I are having this conversation today because I think I'm looking at the situation realistically from all angles and understanding holistically what is the best option for me. I think I'm really leaning towards the higher paying job right now and making sure that I am responsible and in control of how much effort and energy I am putting in to protect myself in my
Yeah.
best interest. And I think that as long as I do that and I'm able to keep that intact and really be strict in within that framework, I think that this is an option that will be more lucrative, not monetarily, but really in terms of opportunity and next steps and growth moving forward.
Yes, that's because to me, again, it's like not just about which one are you choosing, but like after you've chosen it, are we making the situation conducive to the kind of life that you want to live? And nothing is permanent. Like each of these opportunities you're going to leverage for something in your life. So let's just say, okay, so we're going to go right now in my mind, we're going with this quote head option. Okay. What I like about it is that it is giving you the salary that is needed right now. And like you mentioned, those growth opportunities. It also is allowing you to ride out this market, whatever is happening in tech, and hopefully things get better. And so if you decide, okay, in a year, this is not what you want, then hopefully the market's better and you can start looking for work and you're going to have this like really high profile company on your resume.
Right.
So I see that. I'm not saying do this for a year and it's going to be hell and you got to grin and bear it. No, I want to actually talk through some ways that we can guardrail you into this opportunity. Let's say it doesn't work out the way that you wanted. It's going to at least look good on your resume. And then the market will be better by the time that you start looking for work again. So there is something to be said about that. Let's talk quickly about what you can do to make sure that you don't put yourself in a position where burnout is inevitable. In
Mhm.
the past, what has been your typical, what would you say, like behaviors that have you believe has led to the burnout?
Yeah, I think it's pressure that I put on myself. I've worked really hard to be promoted in every single role that I have. And so with that comes this unwritten like rule or expectation that you have to do more and go harder and achieve more hours, more time, more output. And I don't necessarily think that's the case anymore. And being as tenured in my career as I now am, I think that I really do believe in the work smarter, not harder mentality. And I would like to really make sure that I don't fall into old patterns going into this new role. And one of the things that I really need to do is make sure that I'm just covering the bases of my role and responsibility so well that I'm not taking on any extra side projects. I'm not getting in the weeds on any other initiatives, and just really focus on doing the basics of my job so well that I don't overextend into other areas and dilute what it is that I'm actually here to do in order to check all my boxes.
Yeah. Where do you think that drive comes from? The one that makes you go overboard?
Yeah, I think honestly, Claire, when I graduated college, I was going to be a teacher. I never expected to be in tech. I never expected to be in corporate America. So I really fell into this world and, fell in love with certain aspects of it, especially in the fields that I am in currently. And there's so much potential opportunity that I just dove in head first. And I think I got really excited about new possibilities and uncharted territory. At the time, customer success wasn't barely even a thing. And it's like this new side of sales that is really transforming entire sales orgs all over the globe. So it was super exciting to be like on the head start of understanding that industry. And so I think for me, that being an influential part of that and riding that wave has been incredibly fun and also very lucrative for me, not just, again, monetarily, but for a career growth perspective has opened a lot of doors for me.
This is so exciting. Okay, great. So it looks like it's really just a question of self-management here, which is scary because it means you're the bottom line, but that's also exciting because it means that you have options. You're not relying on somebody else here. I have a feeling that you're probably a perfectionist of some sort. And there is a new book out that I am loving called The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control by Catherine Morgan Schaffer. Really recommend that you check that. I'm in the middle of it and I'm underlining every sentence, which is like, well, it's not really helpful anymore. The whole thing is so good. So I think that's wonderful. I think also in figuring out what you need to do in the first 90 days to establish, if you say yes to this, to establish kind of your own safety net of I'm doing the baseline really well. So let me just spitball with you a couple of ideas. A concern that you, first and foremost, if there's any kind of like overdoing of work, learning when is that line being crossed. So getting like really even just a daily journal of noticing when there is any kind of agitation to keep going, whether it's I'm rewriting this document or this email 3 times. Okay, good to know. That's a moment where I start to go overboard. Or I receive an email from somebody and I'm noticing I'm spending a lot of energy thinking about it, or stressing about it, or ruminating on it, or just really get familiar with the patterns of when the inflection point of when you start to go, and I'm just going to say overboard for the lack of a better word. So I would start there just so we can get very methodical, almost scientific. What are we actually dealing with here? What are the patterns? And then we can work backwards from, the trigger. Okay, so I know this is when I start to go overboard, or this is how I go overboard, but really like when does it happen? And maybe not just when it happened, but leading up to that moment where there are things like all of this stuff is data, right? So it could be, you know what, I am realizing now that I tend to go overboard when I'm like about to get my period. Oh, actually, there's like a hormonal component to this. Like really be open-minded to like all the data points that you can collect around these experiences you have of quote, maybe overboard. Okay, so there's there. Then we can start putting a plan into place and you're making it concrete. And you're also turning it into, you're breaking it down, because otherwise this like massive gotta set boundaries with myself and other people, it's like, holy shit, that's huge. Or not being a perfectionist, but that's huge. There are these moments, these micro moments that you are experiencing, that you are acting in this way. So let's tackle it in the micro moment as opposed to this like beast of a thing. Okay, so there's that. There's also, I'd love for you to ask yourself every time that you make a decision, is there an easier way? And by decision, I just a plan of action. Is there an easier way to do this? Is there an easier way to do this? Can I utilize ChatGPT? Is there even a plugin that can support me in this? Is my process of doing this, am I overcomplicating it? Is there a way that I can Let's strip it down to its basics. Do I even need to be doing this? Is this even in my job? And you may decide, I'm still going to do it and I'm going to do it the way that I planned on doing it. But you will begin to trust yourself that you have become way more intentional in everything you do. And I also would love for you to maybe experiment with syncing your work to your circadian rhythm and taking breaks before you need them. So saying in a given day, if I'm going to challenge myself to work for 8 hours, I'm not going to just sit down and work for 8 hours straight. I'm going to do maybe 2 hours at this time, take a break. And in that break, ask yourself, does it need to be restorative or regenerative? Does it have to give me energy or allow me to just chill my energy? And again, take that break before you need it. Then maybe you do, I'm going to do a 3 hour chunk, right? Just start to play with how you're working, when you're working, where you're working. Have I made this as easy as possible for me? Or if you're getting emails from people and it's starting to stress you out, put up an away message that sets the expectation for when you respond to emails, and then do not have that tab open. Remove your phone from in front of you. Don't even have it near you. Listen, sync it to your computer where if somebody's calling, it'll come through, but you don't need to have the phone as like this subconscious or conscious reminder that there's people need you. So I really just want you to look at holistically the way that you operate. And if you can just create conditions for yourself that just allow you to be in the moment, because that's the challenge here, I think, for everybody, is how can you just be as present as possible in everything that you do? And it's going to pay dividends for you. So you're not ruminating in the past, you're not anticipating the future, you're just like focusing on the task at hand. But in order to do that, you have to feel, I think, safe to do that. And that means really, again, reflecting on taking notes of like, how's my life currently going? Or like when I like close my eyes and I imagine saying yes to this job, worst case scenario, let me just anticipate all those things. How can I really design my day in a way that's going to just make it easier for me? Because I don't want you to be in a situation where it's craziness and now you have to set these hard boundaries. Like that's like spending extra energy I really don't want you to. So I'm more looking at this from a preventative place where you never even have to really set a boundary. Like you've just been super clear from the beginning about how you work. And also if you find that a big tendency of yours, and I don't know if this is true, but I'll speak from, I guess, maybe my own experience, could be like people pleasing or a desire to convey your work because you're remote. You want to make sure people understand what you're doing. If you can just set up knowing that might be an issue for you, it's all right. I need to be establishing allies from day one so people all know who I am and I know who they are and we're on the same page of our goals. I'm communicating with my manager. Our priorities are extremely clear and transparent. Every week, I'm sending an update of the work that I did and the impact. And even if you don't get a response from the person and it seems like you don't need to do it, you're at least doing it to safeguard your own anxiety or preventing you from having to like, I don't know. It's just a lot of preventative. I'm just even thinking about my brother being a doctor and people who come in who have issues. And it's like, all right, if you were taking the vitamins or not smoking, maybe we wouldn't get to the issue, right? But it's done in that like day-to-day small things so that you're not in a place where you have to have a really hard conversation about a boundary. I want to, because I have a feeling that's what's making you a bit nervous. I don't think it's either or. I don't think it's inevitable that all this stuff has to be so hard. I just think it's establishing really good habits from the beginning, but habits that are tailored to your personal alchemy, your personal baggage, because that's where you could read Atomic Habits and it all sounds good and fine, but like maybe that's not quite relevant to you. Like, again, taking a look at your hormonal cycle, like you might want to start experimenting in ways like that. Just what would be your own personal diagnosis in a way that your day-to-day is done with ease and focus.
Okay. I'm feverishly taking notes over here.
Good. Okay, good.
Yeah, I feel really good. I feel like I have a lot of clarity. I think the thing that has stood out to me more in this conversation is like how to simplify, how to make it less complicated. And then also I do really like the idea, and I very much subscribe to being proactive instead of reactive. So trying to identify like how that works for me and how I can start practicing those things now up front going into this role to set expectations and have that be the baseline. So I think I just want to look at everything moving forward from that lens as, okay, how do I simplify and make this less complicated or less complex? And B, how do I create a baseline in order to create the framework for me to work within? Those are the two things that are top of mind for me right now.
I'm so glad you said that because it was way more articulate than everything I said. But that means that what I said made sense because you just made it make even more sense. Yes, great. All of that is excellent. I also think at the end of the day, it really comes down to relationships that you build with the people you work with. So you are never filling in the blanks with unknown. There's not I'm not sure how they feel. And like, then we start to create a narrative. It's like, who are these people? What is their agenda and priorities? How can you help them help you? And how do we pay? And what's the relationship that you need to develop so that you can sit here and be like, you know what? I'm comfortable setting a boundary. Like they know me, I know, which can be tough to do when you're remote. I think that there's this hybrid approach though, even though there'll be some stress with the flying. I think being in person, it will fill in some of those blanks that can inevitably happen when you work remotely. Are you looking forward to the travel, like getting away from your family? I think there's benefit to getting to have some energy in your life and alone time in a sense.
Yeah, I think it will make me really productive those days that I on site, and then allow me some more flexibilities the days that I am remote. So I think that I could reestablish of what my current balance looks like in
Yeah.
accordance to what I need how I need to organize my time in the
Yes.
office.
I and the last thing I really just want to underscore is that taking breaks before you need them and figuring out the kind of break that you need to take. Because I even find for myself, I'll be out of sorts and feeling unmotivated. And then I look at my calendar and I realize I have not seen people in person in like weeks. And that I'm somebody who really needs that. It's not just the Zoom stuff. Like I got to have that like interaction. Now, if I overdo it with the interaction, then I'm exhausted too. So it's obviously just knowing what you need and when you need it. And it's pretty wild how disconnected we can sometimes become from ourselves. It seems obvious now when I go, of course, I'm a people person and I need that in-person reaction, participation or experience, but
Absolutely.
somehow just life gets in the way. And it was like, gosh, I have to be scheduling in-person coffee meetings. I think my cadence is maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. So I would really encourage you both looking at how to simplify your life, just really digging into the kind of breaks. And I had used the word before of like restorative or regenerative, and mapping that into your schedule, putting it on your calendar, holding yourself accountable to actually do it. So it's on the simplifying, that's the stripping away. This is the adding in. I think doing those two things simultaneously will really be helpful.
I agree. Thank you so much for that, Claire. It's really easy to be able to forget, especially when you've worked remote for so long, how important that human connection is. And it isn't the same over Zoom. And the opportunities that I've had to meet my colleagues in person have been so rewarding. And so just to make sure that I build that into my schedule and incorporate that into kind of like a break methodology, I think is going to be very valuable.
Yeah. And I'm so excited for whatever comes next. I feel again bad about I want to help all the sort of cause-based things in the world. I just think you can do that on the side or as part of, you can carve that out at this corporate job, because a lot of these corporations, they do have philanthropic arms. An employee resource group, to me, and that would be the best, is if you're able to turn the corporate into the philanthropic in some way. If you can't, that's fine too. But at least knowing that if you end up taking the head option, but you need to incorporate heart somehow into your life, that's going to be huge, because otherwise you are going to feel like you sacrificed a piece of yourself that was really important to you. And even if it was for, quote, good reasons, and the pros of the head option outweigh the pros of the heart option, I just don't want you to look at this and think of it as this binary thing. I can either have this or have that. No, you can have it all. It's just a matter of in what dosage and how does it manifest.
Right. And that I'm going to need to make a priority. So I'm looking forward to figuring out what that's going to look like in the future.
Awesome. Hey, maybe we'll do another call. Thank you so much for doing this. And I know everybody listening is thanking you as well. I'm just so appreciative to you for your sharing your story. I'm really excited for what comes next. It's wonderful to have options that speak to different parts of you. And like I said before, nothing is permanent. It's just a matter of how are you going to use this?
I'll definitely keep you posted. Thank you so much, Claire, for just having the opportunity to talk through this and thought experiment a little bit. I really appreciate it. And I always enjoy my time I get to spend with you. So thank you so much.
Yay! Awesome. All right. I'll talk to you soon.